All right, welcome back to visual programming. I think we're going to pick from where we left last time. If I'm not wrong, we had started looking at CSS. We defined what CSS. We defined what CSS is. We defined what levels of CSS are there. I think we also looked at how we can incorporate CSS in our documents, either inline or using the style attribute at the page header or linking an external file. Then I also think we started selectors and we focused on what we call simple selectors, selecting an element by tag name, selecting elements by class name, selecting elements by ID, and also we looked at how you can be able to target multiple elements using commas. So when you use a comma, you can do selection of different elements. So you can select by class, you can select by ID, you can select by element. So long as you put them in commas, then they will be selected as one particular component and you can apply the styles that you want on them. I think that's where we left at last. Is that so? Is that clear?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now the only problem is that I have too many classes. I don't even know which folder I was using for you guys. So let me see. I don't know if it's this one. It might not be this one, but I can still go ahead and use this. Not a big deal. The point is we just need to see how HTML works. Now, this other group of people who are now coming in, let me just, I'll do you a favor for today. I don't like the idea that once I get started, you're forcing me to come back and forth to admit you back. It's not really nice for the others. But nonetheless, I think that's the last group that I have admitted. Anybody else should go ahead and wait for the video. So today I want us to go a notch higher and look at other types of selectors that we have. So I'll just create a new file here and I'll call it notes.txt. Maybe I can bump the font here a bit. I think that's readable enough. Is that so? That's too big. Well, if it's not going to fit my screen, then probably maybe I'll bump it down a bit. So today I want us to look at what we call combinator selectors. And I want you to pay attention because these selectors are very powerful and they're the same selectors that you're going to be using in JavaScript when we are selecting our for other things like validating them and all that kind of stuff. So in as much as you're going to use simple selectors, combinator selectors are also going to play a very important role. So what is a combinator selector? A combinator selector will allow you to select elements based on a specific relationship between them. So this one allows you to select elements based on specific relationship between them. And there are 4 in total. So this was our part B. This was our B. And inside our B, inside our B, we have the first part, or the first one, which is called the descendant selector. Descendant. A combinator. So when it comes to descendants, we all know about the principle of descendant. So we have something like parent. Let's start with grandparent. Okay, let me assume we're starting from the parent. I have a parent, I have a child, I have a grandchild, and I have great grandchildren. Something like that. So this is how descendants work. So you have your descendants, and from your point as a parent, Your descendants could be your child, your grandchild, or a great grandchild, and you can go on until you reach the level that you want. So it can go on and on until it reaches the level that it reaches, depending on however many generations you're talking about. So in CSS, we also have these descendant selectors, which will allow you to match all elements that are descendants of an element. So allows you to match all elements that are descendants of the selected element. So anything that's going to be a descendant of a specific element, whether they are a child, they are a grandchild, they are a great-grandchild, and so forth and so forth, the descendant combinator will allow you to select it. And it is usually denoted with a space. I can't type a space, so I just put space here. So whenever you put a space, it means that it's going to pick anything that is a descendant of a particular parent. So I'll create a file here, and I'll call it css02.html. Over here, I'll put mx like that, and I'll say combinator selectors. So in this page, let's assume we have separate parts of the page. So we have a div, and this div we're going to give it maybe say that is heading. So we're going to put our headings there. Then you have another div here. Now this one will give it page content. Then we have another div here. We give it maybe an ID of page footer, something like that. So we have 3 divs. Then this div has heading 1, and I'll simply say welcome to TUK, for example. Then I can put a paragraph here, and I'll simply say lorem 30. Just some random text over there, nothing very important. Then here I could probably have something like maybe heading 2, and I can say departments, or rather schools. Then I have maybe another list with 5 list items listing all the schools that we have at TUK. So we have architectural and built environment. It's called Sabi. We have Febe. We have FAST. We have Faculty of Applied Sciences and Technology. We have School of Business and Legal Studies. And we have Department of Graphics, Art and Design. Something like that. So, and then probably here we have another paragraph. And then we have here lorem 30. Another lorem. They are not going to be the same because these are just random words being picked, so you might not end up with the exact same text. So you have lorem ipsum, at least up to this part is going to be the same. Then moving forward is going to pick other different texts altogether. Only the first part is going to be exactly the same. So that is that is an example of this content over here, and it has these elements. But inside this paragraph, I can have a span here, and I'll maybe say I want to give it maybe some text like message from HOD or something like that. So this is the parent, this is a child, this is a child, this is a grandchild, this is a child, this is a grandchild, and of course, since this is a child, inside this paragraph, I can also come and add other things inside it. So you get the idea. So I can go as deep as possible. So what the descendant selector does is that when you target an element, say like this page content, it will pick anything that's an element inside it. So whether it's a direct child like that, whether it's going to be a sibling, a great grandchild, it's going to pick however many levels you go inside. So inside this one, you can also have another list item, not list item, but ordered list. Then you have now the schools inside here. So let me put 3. Z times 3. Say architecture. Well, civil engineering. We also have a survey, something like that. So you can see this, if I'm targeting this is a child, this UL is also a child, this LI is a grandchild, this is also a grandchild, these are great grandchildren. So you can go on and on however you want the page to look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this inside live server, and I'm going to display them side by side so that now we're able to see how this works out. So I'm going to put that over there, and I'm going to pick why has it shown me on the other side? So probably I need to switch windows. This is not what I was looking for. I'm here, and I need to open a browser window here. Then I display it here. I stop this. Once this is open, I can display them side by side. This other one. Then this one. Like that. So I try to go live. Yeah, so something like that. So I can also collapse this so that I'm only left with the corridor. Now you can see, so I have this page content over here, which actually starts at school here. So I have this, I have those children and those great-grandchildren. So if I wanted to target all the children of all the descendants rather of page content, what I would have done is to come here. I can do my CSS at the top here. It makes it easier for me to style it. So I'll just put style over here. But in actual practice, I would actually do this in a separate document so that I just link that file in this file, and I can be able to reuse those styles. But for demo purposes, let me just use them inside here. So for the style, what I'll simply say, select an element with an ID called page content. Page content. Now in the page content, get me all the ordered lists. So it means if I say ordered lists like that, it means that anything that is inside page content, then there's a space inside here, but it's an ordered list. Then apply the following style. So it won't matter at what level it is. So let me use this one as an ordered list so that we see the two of them, OL, and this one to be also OL. So I have this OL is a direct child. This one is a grandchild. So what I want to do is probably maybe change the text to say green. So what I would have done here is to come and say color American green, something of that sort. So you'll see all of them have changed into green. Maybe I can put a background. Background, you need to separate with a comma, with a semicolon here, then background, then I say yellow. You'll see it has applied background of yellow for this outer one and also for this inner one. Are we together? So that is what the descendant selector does. Now, so it will pick anything that is, so long as it is inside here and it is an OL, that is what this portion of this selector would do. It allows me to select all the descendants of a particular element. It can be an element, it can be something you pick by ID, something you pick by class name, and so forth and so forth. It won't really matter how you target the element. Now, the second selector, when it comes to combinator selectors, I'll just go at the end here, and then I'll put 2, is what we refer to as the child combinator. Child combinator. The first one was descendant. Now we're talking about the child combinator. So child combinator will only allow you to select all elements that are direct children of a specific element. Allows, sorry. So select all elements that are direct children of an element. And this is very important because sometimes you don't want to pick all the descendants. You're only interested in the direct children. Like in the case that you're talking about over here, you can see I have this oil and this oil. This one is the direct child of page content. This one is a grandchild of page content. So if I wanted to target only the direct children, then I'll need a different selector because adding a space here won't have helped. So what I'll do here is I'll comment this portion of code. To comment, I highlight, then I press Control and /. It will add comments to it. Then I can now pick my selector, which is page content. And of course, the child selector is usually denoted with a greater than symbol. So for the child combinator, you will use the greater than symbol, not less than, greater than symbol, like that. That means direct children or child selector. So page content, then I'll say get children that are ordered lists, like that. Then here, maybe I can say font size. Maybe I make the font size bigger, like 1 rem. 1 rem. Page content, yeah, that. Oil is that. 1 rem is, let me make it a 2 rem. So yeah, I was hoping it will not change this, but that's a bit strange. Well, I think that will probably change because these are elements inside here, and if I change this one, then probably these ones are going to be changed. But well, let me try with something like a paragraph. So I have a paragraph here. Then maybe say inside this paragraph, I have another paragraph. Then I'll simply say courses offered. Then full colon. Then inside the paragraph, I use an oil, and I'll simply say list item, certificate in IT. I have another list item, diploma in IT, and another list item, LI, Bachelor of Tech in IT. I don't know why this is not, that is strange because this is not a direct child, so I shouldn't be able to pick. So the direct child should not be able to pick. I don't know why it's picking because this is not a direct child of, oh, yeah, it's not a direct child of, it's not a direct child of page content because page content is here. That's direct child. That's direct child. That is direct child, but this is not a direct child to it. Well, let me just have a look at that. I think okay, so let me just have a look at that. I think I don't think there's anything I'm doing wrong here. Your page content get me a direct child of OL should only select the ones that are on the outside, not the ones that are on the inside. So maybe let me try something else. Background green is still selecting all of them. Let me just have a look at that. Should be greater than if I'm not wrong. Yeah, it's greater than. Yeah, I don't know why that is. That is actually, yeah, that is actually how it's supposed to work. Why isn't that style working? Why isn't that style working? Well, I think I needed to for the ordered items. I think I need to select each li element inside it. That still won't work out. Well, I don't know why that is. Let me try something like a paragraph. Probably maybe when it comes to this ordered list, they are a bit. Yeah, so you can see only the paragraphs that are. I have these. Let me put a paragraph here. Welcome to school SBLS. So SBLS is a paragraph. This one is a child. This one is also a child. This is also a direct child. But these courses offered, you can see they are a paragraph, but they have not been styled because they are not direct children of page content. I don't know why for the ordered list it's not working, but as you can see from here, if I put get me the page content and get me only the paragraphs that are direct children, it will select page content, it will pick this paragraph, which means welcome, that one. Then it will go to the next one. Even if I was to put another paragraph here, probably another paragraph here and say department levels. So you can see this one is not going to be styled because even as much as it's a paragraph, it's not a direct child of page content. So that's not going to apply that style. Likewise, this is going to apply that style. As you can see over here, message up to courses offered. And courses offered courses offered is also a paragraph. But I think that one has been applied because of this. But anything that would go inside it like this, as you can see over here, then that particular class, that particular element would not have that particular application. So that is what the child element does. It allows you to target specific direct children of the target element that you are looking for. Then the other combinator selector we have is what we call the next sibling. Is it next sibling or yeah, I think it's next sibling. So next sibling. So what does next sibling do? And of course, next sibling is usually denoted with a plus. So what does next sibling do? What next sibling does is basically to allow you to be able to select elements that are directly after a specific element. So select elements that are directly after a specific element. So you want elements that are following each other. For example, I can have here, sorry, I think I reduce this one a bit. Yeah. So for example, what you have inside here is I have this heading and I have this paragraph. So if I want only paragraphs that are directly following a particular element, then I'll use the next sibling select combinator or selector. So basically what I would have wanted is anything that is for any paragraph that is following H2. So I'll select this H2, then anything that is a paragraph that is following H2 directly, then I want to apply certain styles to it. So something like this. So maybe I'm targeting this, so it's going to be paragraph following H2. And of course, if I have another H2 down here, then I have another paragraph, and I can say admission criteria. Then probably I'll put ordered list, an ordered list with 3 list items like application, registration, and maybe say pay fees, something like that. So this is H2, a paragraph following it. This is also H2, another paragraph following it. So it means that other paragraphs that are inside there, we might not be able to target them. So what I'll do is I'll remove this style. This is a video, so you can't be able to replicate these styles much later on. So I'll simply say, get me a H2. Then after get me H2, get me any paragraph that is following H2. Then from there, I want you to give them a background of maybe say red, something like that. So you can see this one will be red because it is the only H2 that is directly following a paragraph. This other H2, well, this one should have worked. Where is this? Oh, this one is inside the H2. So this one should have gone outside this div. But yeah, it's okay. It looks okay. Let me see the structure. So H2 paragraph. That one is same level. That one is, but oh, okay. It won't work because it has to be directly. But that looks like it's directly opposite. Directly. No, this paragraph is inside the H2. So what I should have done here is to do that. Then I move this one on the outside. So then of course I needed to have some text here for it to be able to work. So here are courses offered. Now that should be able to work. Yes. So what it is that it will pick any H2. Let me just structure this nicely. So what my instruction says is that get me any H2, then get me a paragraph that is following it immediately. Okay, next sibling. Anything that's a paragraph following a H2, apply this color. So it's going to scan my document, look for H2. Anything that's a paragraph following H2, apply red. Traverse again, gets another H2. Anything that's following H2 as a paragraph, also mark that, and so on and so on. So that is ideally how the next sibling combinator works. Then of course we have the fourth category and the last one as far as combinator selectors are concerned. We refer to it as subsequent sibling combinator. 4 is here. Subsequent sibling combinator or combinator, however you want to spell it. And this one is usually denoted with a tilde. A tilde is that that infinity symbol that is just before the number 1 key on your keyboard. If you look at your keyboard, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just before number 1, we have the tilde. Where you hold shift under that, you will get this tilde. It's called a tilde. Tilde or tilde, depending on how you'd want to pronounce it. So I call it a tilde. Some people call it tilde. So what this does is that it allows you to select all the elements that are next siblings of a specific element. So all the elements that are next siblings of a particular element. Next siblings means that they have the same parent, and of course, they are following each other. So remember, with this other one, they don't have to, with plus, they only have to follow each other. Okay, so they have to follow each other. But now with the next sibling, they must have the same parent. So the next sibling, like this, these ones have the same parent and they follow each other. So even if I replaced this with a tilde, like that, you'll see that so long as they're following each other, so I have welcome to SBLS, which is this. Then I also have this message from HOD, which is here. So you can see now this paragraph is also directly related to this, but it is not next to it. The other one was next. This other one is so long as they have the same parent, but they and they're following each other and they have the same parent. So it will be able to pick this because they're at the same level. I can collapse this one here. You can also see that this paragraph and this paragraph are on the same level and they're following H2. So that is also going to be highlighted. Then I have this other H2. So that's going to be highlighted. This courses offered is also a paragraph next to this H2, as you can see, courses offered over there. Then, of course, okay, that's that. So, oh, I collapsed this one. This one I collapsed here. I was wondering where this one was coming from. Yeah. So you can also see this paragraph and this H2 are also at the same level. So any paragraph that's going to be at the same level with H2. So even if I was to remove this portion here, you'll still find that this one will be highlighted because this one and this one and these ones are all paragraphs following H2 and they have the same parent who is the page content. So that's what we're referring to as subsequent sibling combinator. So next sibling combinator, if I put the plus here, it will only pick the one that is directly below it, 1. Once it gets that, it stops. But if I want all the others, just like the sentence, and I put that, so long as they have the same parent and they're following H2, then it will also be able to select those ones. Are we together up to that point? Well, I'm not on the other screen, so you have to speak up.
Yes, Malim, we are together.
Okay, excellent. So now the other type of selector that, okay, I should have explained this one, allows you to select all elements that follow a selected element and are siblings to the parent. So in short, they must have the same parent with the selector, and they must be following each other, which means it is not nested. Anything that is nested is not going to be there, as I've just explained. Their parent has to be 1. They can have, so long as their parent is 1 and they appear anywhere inside your DOM, then it allows you to be able to select it. Now, these ones are very powerful because, as I had mentioned before, when you are doing your selectors, you're going to be targeting various portions of your page or your content, and that's going to play a very, very important role in how you're going to style or how you're going to target elements on your page. Are we together? Right, so the next thing is what we call pseudo selectors. They are divided into, well, they're quite a number. So let me just call them what? Let me say C here, and I'll say, let me start with the class, pseudo class selectors. What is a pseudo? You guys usually say your account is pseudo. What does it mean? No idea. Okay. Pseudo means another name. Right? It's not real. It's more like an alien. Yeah. So it's more like you have a name, then you have another name. So you have a pseudo name. So that other name is yours, but it's used to conceal your real name. That kind of a thing, isn't it? So pseudo class selectors tend to behave more or less the same. So what they do is that they define a style for a specific state of an element. So these ones are used to define a style for specific state of an element. And I'm going to show you this, and there are quite a number of examples of this. There are quite a number of examples for this. So first of all, I'll start with the pseudo class for text. Then I'll look at now a pseudo class for the structure. So what happens is this. Well, the syntax, maybe I can give you the syntax first. For pseudo class would be selector, then you put full column, then you put the pseudo class name. Then of course you can now apply your styles inside there. So you'll put your selector, full column, then the pseudo class name. Then of course now you can be able to define your styles. So I'll give us an example. What I will do is I'll probably hide all this. That's not going to work because I have this one over here. So just need to remove it so that it doesn't get in my way. So let me comment all this. I don't need them. Then I probably have now a blank page. Now I have anchor elements. So let me say I want something like a menu. So probably please follow us on. Then I can give an anchor. I'll simply say http www.google.com. I'll put a target of blank. So that you're able to see what it does. So here I'll simply say Google, and I'll repeat, and another one, and another one. So this will be Yahoo. This will be Facebook. This will be Instagram. So this will be Yahoo, Facebook, and Instagram. So now, well, maybe I could, do I need to give breaks to them? Maybe, let me just put some white space between them so that you're able to see them clearly. Now there's white space between them. Well, maybe two. Two should be good. Like that. So there's enough space between them. So you can see we're saying a pseudo selector will define the style for a specific state of an element. Now, this is an anchor element, and we might want to change this color from this blue to maybe say our theme color, which is red. So say our theme color is red. So what I could do here, I could come and say, get me an anchor element and style the link. Link is when it is anything that's a link. Then I can simply say color, then maybe say red, like that. So you can see by default, all of them will become red as a link. So long as anything is a link, then it becomes red. So the state here is the link state. Okay. Then probably maybe I can say text decoration is none to remove the double underline, like that. So the underline is not there. And I can even change the background to maybe say green, if that's a thing you'd like. Well, that doesn't look very good. Maybe I can make this one white. Well, maybe I can add some padding of maybe say 3 pixels all around. something like that. I can probably make the border radius 1 pixel. Well, that's too small. Maybe say 4 pixels. So you can see they're rounded a bit. So probably maybe this one make it 5 pixels. Something like that. So you can see now I have, by default, anything that I define as a link will have these styles. Now, and we have said the pseudo classes are based on styling elements when you based on a particular state. So what would happen if I move the mouse over this? You see now that's a state. When I move the mouse over it, it means that it is going to be active at that particular point. So what I could do is I'll say any link that is hovered on, then maybe say color will be yellow. So nothing will happen here, but immediately I move the mouse over it, you can see the color changes to yellow, right? So that is a state. Hover is also a state. Maybe when I click on it, it opens Google. When I come back, you can see now the color is orange. So probably maybe I want the color to be a little bit something else instead of this default orange for links that I've visited. So what I'll do here, I'll say link that has been visited. Probably I want the color, I want the background to be white. So you can see now when it's visited, the background will be white. All right. And maybe when it is active, which means I've clicked on it, it is still processing, I might want to give it a different color. You get the idea, right? So when you're talking about pseudo selectors, we're talking about selectors that allow you to apply styles when an element is at a particular or is on a particular state. I'll give us another example. Let's assume we have an input here for username and password. So I'll put a paragraph here, and I'll say, please enter your login credentials. Right? So I have that. Then I can have here, I have a div called username or username, and I have a label here for username. Well, let me just say user. I have a div here for label for username. I'll put here username, and I have an input here, which is a text, and it's so called also it has an ID of username, like that. So username. So you see, what would happen is by default, when I apply, when this thing loads, nothing applies to it. But when it has focus like that, then you can see this border applies. So it means that this is active. So what I could do is I could simply say target that element with the username, or I can give them a class if I want to target so many of them. So get me anything that has an ID of username, and when it has focus, do the following. Sorry, maybe say border is don't worry about this 1 pixel solid, maybe say green. So I want to change that outline from the color that it had to something else. So when I focus on it, username focus, is it focus or active? It should be focus. Username, did I give it the correct class name? Username, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that should have yeah, it should be focus. Should be focus. Let me just see. Username focus, or let me just try to use input. Input is, but that should have allowed me to even to apply the style directly. Focus. Why is it not? Why is it not applying? Strange. That's very strange. That should be able to apply. Yeah, because it's an input. It's actually an input. Doesn't matter the type, and it has the. And I'm saying when it is active, it should be able to apply the border. Am I missing out on something? That actually looks okay. 1 pixel solid green. I think it should be outline. Yeah, it's outline. It's not border. It's actually outline. I was targeting around. So even if I used the selector, which was username, when it focuses it, you can see the outline is that. So I can actually remove. I can actually say something like font size. I can make the font bigger when it's active. Maybe say 2 rems, so that you're just able to see what's going on there. So when it's active, you can see now it is bigger, and of course the text inside it is black. I can decide when it is focused, maybe say the color of the text to be red, and we can go on and on depending on how you want it to go. So focus, now you can see that works out. So these are what we are referring to as what we call the pseudo class selectors. And they are very powerful because, as you can see, when it is not active, it goes back to original. When it is active, then I've changed into other things, so I can be able to tell the user exactly what is going on. If they need to fill in some data and all that, I can be able to highlight that for them. So that is how we use the pseudo class. And I'm going to give you a reference where you can be able to get a whole all of them if you wanted to know exactly what each and every one of them does. So here we're just looking at what they are, examples, and how we can actually put them into practice. Now, the other type of pseudo selector is what we call a structural pseudo class. So this one was what we are referring to as pseudo class name. Then we have structural pseudo class. So number 2 on this is structural pseudo class. So this structural pseudo class will allow you to select an element based on their position in the document tree. So select an element based on their position on the document tree. So to allow you to select an element based on their position in the document tree. So for example, I can have maybe say here I have an ordered list, and it has 5 list elements, and this one is tea, coffee, milk, maybe I have latte, and maybe say cappuccino, something like that. I don't know if that's how you spell cappuccino. Probably it's capital P. So you have something like this. So somebody probably to give you a paragraph here and say drinks available. So these are the drinks available. What would you like to have? Now I want to highlight the first one. Only, and I want to leave the rest. So what would happen is usually I would come here and I would say something like I want to get an ordered list, and I want to get all the children. Okay, so all the children will be li. So it will get me an ordered list and get me all the children, and maybe I can simply say I want the color to be green. What that will do is that it will apply to all of them, okay? Because this will mean pick all the children, and in short, the space is descendant. Now, if I want to select a specific element, I'll say the list item, and I'll say like that. So you can see when I say first child, it will only highlight the first one. Well, maybe I can make the font bigger so you can see. Font size, green, then font size, maybe say 2 rem. So you can see when I select list item, it will select all of them, but I might want to select based on position. So in this particular case, is first child. So first child means get me the list item that is the first child. In this particular case, it is T. If I wanted the last child, I'll put here last child. So it will get the last child, which is cappuccino here. What if I want the second child? How would you put the second child? I'll say nth child, then I specify the number, and they start from 0, so I'll put nth child 1 to select the second one. Okay, actually they don't start at 0, they start at 1, so they're not like arrays, so that will give me that particular one. So if I put 3 or 4 or 5, you're seeing now that at that point we are able to select an element based on its position. So you can use first child, you can use last child, you can use nth child, then you tell it exactly which element you're targeting as far as this selector is concerned. That's why we're referring to them as what we call structural pseudo classes. As I said, these are very powerful selectors, and they're going to prove very useful when we will be doing our JavaScript, because we'll be targeting specific elements within the page, and we want to maybe style them separately, maybe apply some effects on them or stuff like that, and so many other things that we might want to do with CSS. For now, I'm only focusing on selectors. We're going to look at these other things like colors and fonts and borders and margins and paddings and all that kind of thing later on. So for now, let's just focus on the selectors themselves. So that is structural pseudo selector. You can even select based on language. So if your website is supporting multiple language, I can say when the language is this, then I target an element based on a particular language, then probably I want to style it differently. Maybe I want to make it red or something like that to show that there is actually now a translation for different language or something of the sort. All right. Then we also have another type of selector called pseudo element selector. So that was C. Then we have D here. That was pseudo class selector. Now we have pseudo element selector. So what does a pseudo element selector do? It allows us to be able to style a specific part of an element. So allows us to select and style a specific part of an element. So for example, I believe all of us have read the newspaper, and on the newspaper, usually when there's a story that is starting, we have something called a drop cap, right? So a drop cap looks something like this. Something like this. You can see this B is bigger. Well, this is a good example. You can see this B is bigger and it's covering all the other text. So that B, D, I can have this kind of an M. This M is big, something of the sort. So you might want to have that kind of an effect where I only want to style the first letter of a paragraph, or maybe the second letter, or it will depend on really what you are trying to achieve at the end of the day. But a drop cap is the closest example to me home that I would want to use for a pseudo element selector to show us how it works. So for a pseudo element selector, I could simply say first letter, and the syntax of pseudo element selector is slightly different. So let me just put the syntax here. For class selector, we said we are using a single. Let me just put it down here. We're using a single. What do we call this? Single column, single full column. We use a single full column. For the pseudo element selector, we'll have our selector here, but then we'll have 2 full columns. Then we'll have a pseudo element selector. Then of course, we're going to apply our styles inside there. So let's say, for example, we want to do something like this drop cap over here. So what I could do is I would come to my document. I would come and probably say create a paragraph here. And in this paragraph, I give say lorem 100. And that's a lot of characters. So you can see that's 100. Then what I want to do is I want the L to be large, so large, so that now it behaves like a drop cap. So I'll simply say this paragraph and I'll call it, give it a class of my story, because I'm only targeting that. Of course, I have other paragraphs here. Well, you could apply to all of them. You could apply to all of them. So I could come here and say, get me a paragraph, all the paragraphs on my page, then get me the first letter. And on the first letter, make the font size 5 rem. So you can see anything that's a paragraph has the letter bumped up by more than 5 pixels. So anything that is a paragraph inside our document, like I have a paragraph here, please enter your credentials, which is that. I have another paragraph here, which is drinks available. You can see that's also applied, and so forth and so forth. So that's one example. Or alternatively, besides the first letter, you can even say the first word. It's actually not first word, but it's called first line. Not first word, first line. So for the first line of your text, as you can see inside here, it has become bigger. So that's an example of how we would use what we call pseudo class selector. I mean, not pseudo class, but pseudo element selector. So pseudo element selector, you would denote it with 2 double colons. Pseudo class selector, you denote with pseudo class selector, whether it's structural or it's based on the class itself, you'd use a single colon for it. Are you together up to that point?
Yes.
Yes.
Now let's look at another type of selector, which is still considered part of the pseudo selectors, and we call it now this portion that I've talked about here, this line or letter, they are referred to as text selectors because they'll apply on the text itself. All right. So then there's also another one which is content, which now depends on the content. I can apply the same pseudo element selector inside an entire element, and they're called content pseudo elements. They're still pseudo element selectors, but now they're based on the content. So pseudo content selector. It is still part of pseudo elements, only that now I am using it to select the entire content. So what this one would do is basically allow you to select and apply styles based on the content. A very classic example is if you go to Google, for example, and you search something like hello world, what you're going to see is I have this ordered list, and as I click on whatever I'm applying, you can see this line appearing at the bottom here. So short videos, it highlights this for you. And it could be on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. It depends on really how you want to apply it. So let's say, for example, I want, for this content over here, I want to put a bar on the left-hand side here. I can put the bar on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side. It depends on really how you want to forward, but let me put it on the right-hand side. Of course, I'll simply apply the border on before it. I'll not put the border below it, but it will depend on how you really want to style it. We won't look at that in the future. For now, I'm only interested in showing you how that effect works. So in this one, what I want to do is next to this entire content, I want to apply a border here that is blue in color. Then probably I'll give it some space between that border and this content so that it is just pushed inside a little. So what I'll do here is I'll give this paragraph maybe a class, my story, as I've given it. Then I'll come here and I'll say inside my story, so dot my story, that should target the whole of this. Then what do I want to do? I want to put before it. So before it, just before you start that story, and that's an example of why you're calling it now a content pseudo selector. So first of all, I'll say content is going to be blank. I'll say something like width of the content will be say 10 pixels. You're not going to see it, but let me say background. I'll make it blue. By now it should have appeared. Background is blue. Let me put some border, 1 pixel solid blue. Well, I think it's because this first letter is too big. Okay, so probably the blue is there. I wanted it to cover the entire paragraph. Let me see how I've structured it. Let me give it a height. Probably need to give it a bigger height. That won't work. So let me give something like 200 pixels. Why is it not applying? I probably need to give this one a height. So minimum height of let me give it 300 pixels. Let me give it some padding of 30 pixels to push it inside a bit. Yeah, then why is it not applying? Okay. Okay, that works, but why isn't it adding the height? Why isn't it adding the height? Well, you get the idea. I'll probably check why, but you get the idea. So when I want to put something before a certain component, then I can be able to apply that to it. So get me a paragraph. Well, let me try to put inside a paragraph and see. So it will only apply on the paragraph because, okay, it's not block level. So anyway, you can, but you get the idea. So if I want to put something before a content, I can actually have that. And sometimes I might also want to put it after the content. So if I want to put it after the content instead of before, I'll simply say after, like that. So after a paragraph, it will be able to apply that style. So I could also be able to use that to create the effect that I had shown us over here, something like this. As we're cutting our menus, you'll be able to see how we do that. But that is what we're referring to as a pseudo a content pseudo element, and they're powerful because it's not only before and after. You might also want, for example, you see if I highlight this, by default the background is blue and the text is white. Maybe my theme color is green and probably I want it to be yellow when it's selected. So what I could do here is do something like this. I could simply say anything that's going to be a paragraph, and wherever you select it, I want you to apply the following style. So I'll say background. You can use background color, you can use background is green, and maybe I'll say color for the text color is yellow. So maybe, well, of course, I know green and yellow don't work well, but I'm just demonstrating how this works out. So you undo that and I highlight this, you can now see I've been able to change how that behaves. right? And sometimes I might also want to be able to change things like these markers over here. So I can simply come and say for anything that is, these ones are they a UL or an OL? Anything that is UL, then marker, then I can simply change to disk style. Is it disk type? Well, I don't usually this a lot, so let me just look at the class names. Marker, CSS marker pseudo element. They use I wanted the yeah, this list item. So display, you can display list item, something like that. So you can display something like that. So when you say list item and then the counter, then of course it will be able to apply something like that. So when you have your marker is when you have a list item or another list item and you want to be able to change the markers. You can, I think, was it disk type or let me just see. Was it disk type or that's not what I'm looking for. Was it disk type or sorry, disk type. I think it's disk type, but I don't use this a lot for the styling. I don't use that a lot for styling. Oh, it is list style type. This is what I was looking for. List style type. List style type, I can say circle. Full colon, circle. Something like that. So circle is the default. I can use square. Was this list? This was UL. UL. LI. Why isn't that picking? I just wanted well, okay, probably maybe I might not be able to change that, but I can change the color. So maybe same color to red. So it will probably change these all markers to red, as you can see, and so forth and so forth. But the whole point is we're just discussing how the pseudo elements work. So you can be able to target various elements based on components on your page. So like the selection part, when you have highlighted, you might want to insert some content before, some content after, and so forth and so forth. That's what the pseudo content element is all about. Now let's look at, I hope that is clear. Anyway, I hope that is clear.
No.
It's not clear. What?
Kindly
Yeah,
give the
the marker, I was just trying to show you the different parts of pseudo element. I showed us the before, the after, and the selection. And also just trying to show if I wanted to target the markers on this ordered list, I can't be able to target them by changing their color, changing their size, changing their content. By the way, I can change the content to something like maybe say double arrow if I need to. So you need to put a semicolon here so that the style applies. So you can see now it becomes double arrow if I wanted to change the style, or if I wanted them to be something like an @ symbol. So you can see you can be able to target the elements inside the marker of a list item. Actually, I don't need this. That should just be enough because the OL, well, I'll need the list item. Only the list item because I'm targeting the list items inside an ordered list, and there could be just a list item without that. So whether it's an ordered list or ordered list, then it should be able to mark them like that. So I was just trying to say you can put content before or after like this. You can be able to apply on selection like this, or you can be able to use them for markers like this. So I was just giving different examples of what list elements would actually do. What pseudo, rather what we call content pseudo element. So it's based on the content. So here I'm talking about the content of the list item. I'm talking about the content of selection. I'm also talking about the content that I'm putting after a particular paragraph or something of the sort. So it's going to be, the styling is based on the content and based on whatever I have selected, based on the content that it has. So I want to change the content that it has based on certain elements. That's what content pseudo elements are all about. The one that we had done before, these pseudo class elements, like these ones, they allow us to be able to target elements based on their position as far as the content is concerned. So they can be the first child, they can be the nth child, they can be the last child, they can be a particular language. So if you go to actually w3schools.com and you try and get pseudo element reference, I think it's reference, but this is a very important resource. You'll be able to get all the pseudo elements that are there with, you can see I have after, backdrop, before, file selector, first letter, first line, highlight, marker, placeholder, selection. I think we've done selection. We have also done marker, we have also done after, and we've also done before. So you can see there's quite a number that you can be able to look at. So these are pseudo CSS pseudo element. Then you can also have what you call, actually when you come here, so when you come to CSS and you come to references, where are the references? References should be somewhere here. I'm not seeing reference, but what do we have here? What do we have here? Well, I'll get you the exact reference where you have all the pseudo classes and what you can actually be able to use for them. So you can see again, for pseudo class names, we have active, any link, autofill, checked, default. So I think I did first child, I also did last child, I also did focus. So you can look at all of this. I did nth child, nth last child, if you want to count from the bottom, nth child if you want to count from the top, nth last child if you want to count from the bottom, and so forth and so forth. So you can use all these references just to be able, I think also use language. Yeah, if you are targeting something on a particular language, you can be able to apply styles. So in a nutshell, I'm just trying to show us the selectors that are there, but of course it's going to be your responsibility if you wanted to learn all of them, because I might not be able to show us all of them. It will take us a whole class just to learn about pseudo class selectors, and we have a lot of things to cover. All right, so I hope that is clear. My point is to identify the categories of the selectors that we use in CSS, show us how to use them. Then, of course, for reference purposes, you can come back to a list like this and you're able to get all the content that you need to, all the class names that are there. Then you can be able to see what is it that they actually do. Then you can now apply those styles on your page, right? Or on your content. Now, the last type of element, the last type of selector that you can use is what we are referring to as attribute selectors. So that is part E. We have attribute selectors. So attribute selectors will allow you to select elements based on a certain attribute. So select elements based on a certain attribute, and all attributes are usually enclosed inside square brackets like that. So all attributes are usually enclosed inside square bracket. Now, this is easier said than done because these attributes can be as complex as possible. I'm going to show us just a few, but of course, I'm also going to give you reference where you can be able to go and look at the rest. Of course, as I've said, I'm only going to show you what I feel would be useful for us in our CSS and our JavaScript. But of course, you can always learn all the others and see exactly how they work out. So, for example, let me come back to this file over here. And let's say we have different types of input. So we have form here, form. The action is nowhere. So inside this form, I have a label that says username. Well, I had it up here, so well, I might mask this to avoid conflict. So I'll say username. I'll put here username. Then I'll have an input of type text with an ID of username, name of username. I'll put a break here. I'll have another label with an ID of password. And of course, I'll have an input of type password with an ID of password and a name of password. That's just a coincidence that all of them are password. Probably you would use something else for them. Break. Then maybe I have a select here. I have another label for gender. Somebody wants to say something on chat. Looks like I've heard somebody mentioning something. Oscar, there's something you want to say? Oscar, you have a question? You raised your hand by mistake. Okay. So we have gender here, and I can have a select here for gender. Then gender. Then I have option. I'll say choose. Then this will be selected, disabled, which means I don't want somebody to choose that. As you can see, I can't choose it because I've disabled it. Then I have option, male. I have another option, female. And you can go on and on. So what I want to say is that maybe I want to target, well, anything that's an input. I already put some style on an input. This style is applying. Yeah, so it's no longer there. So we have these inputs, and what I want to do is I want to format anything that is an input here. I want to maybe, give it some styling. So what I could do here, I could simply come and use attribute selector and say something like, I want an input, anything that's an input. Then this input, I can give it a certain value. So I could simply say something. Now that is an attribute selector, so it will check anything that is an input. All right. So anything that's an input, I'll probably say I want a font size to be, say, 2 rem, 1.5 rem, something like that. Well, I'll say input, because usually there's input, then there is equal to value input, and I'll say type is equals to input type input. Well, it's not like that. I'll simply need to simply say something, because that's an input is not an attribute. Input is an element, then type is the attribute. Type is equals to text. So anything that is input type text, let me give it 1.5 rem. So you can see this one has automatically become 1.5 rem. So if I say just input without the type, or type password over here, you can see the password is the one that has become bigger. So if I say I want both input and password, so I'll simply put a comma here and I'll say input rather type is equals to password, like that. So now there are two, so you can see input type password. Yeah, that should work. Oh, there should be text and password, sorry. So you can see now both text and password have bigger text, and of course I can go ahead and maybe say a margin bottom of 20 pixels. They'll have margin bottoms of 20 pixels. I can have them aligned on the left, on the right. I can give them any styles that I want. The most important thing I wanted us to discuss or to get to know is that I am targeting an input, which is my selector. Then I'm targeting an attribute that it has. It could be a class. Of course, if it's a class, I'll put a dot, but I can also use the class as an attribute, and I'll be able to select the class from here. So my point is, when we are using CSS selectors, there's really quite a number of things that we can be able to achieve when it comes to selector. One thing I need to understand is all the 5 selectors that we have discussed. Simple selectors, where we can select an element by tag name, by class name, by ID, or even things like combining them. Maybe I want things that are belonging to this particular type, and they have this particular class. Maybe it is it's an input of this class, or it's a paragraph of this ID, or it's probably a div with these this class name, and so forth and so forth. So those are what we are referring to as simple selectors. Then the combinator selectors, the ones I've discussed, the descendant, the child, the next siblings, and the subsequent sibling. It's also very important for us to be able to understand how those ones also work out. Then the pseudo selectors, we have the pseudo class selectors, where you can pick things based on their status, like when they are active, when they have focus, when you hover over them, when they are active, when it's a link that has been visited, and all that kind of stuff. You need to be able to know exactly how I can be able to pick elements based on that pseudo class selector. And of course, also the structure selector, where we said you select it based on a position. Is it the first child? Is it the nth child? Is it the last child? And so forth and so forth. Does it have a certain language? And of course, I'll give you the reference to all the structural selectors that you can be able to select based on your list. Then we also have the pseudo element selectors, where we can be able to target elements based on the on some portion, like maybe the first line, or maybe the first character, like the drop down cap example that you've done, and so forth and so forth. Then I think we also need to be able to be very careful about what we are referring to as content pseudo selector, where we can insert things before an element, after an element. We can also insert a marker. We can do selection and all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, last but not least, um, is the attribute selector, where I can be able to pick things based on certain attributes, like maybe an input of type text, or an input of type password, or an input that has text that looks like this if it's a paragraph. So you can be able to do all of that kind of stuff. But again, as I've said, my work is to identify the kind of selectors that you can use, give us an example, but your work is also to be able to make sure that if you need to refer to more content based on this, you can go ahead and look at something like the 3 schools. They have very good reference for all the content. I'm going to share that with the class rep right after this, which you can look at if you have time. But this is what I want you to understand, so that when we start doing our styling, like maybe applying fonts, applying padding, applying backgrounds, applying margins, and maybe even things like animations. We want to hide a few things. We want to show a few things. We want to do what we call responsive design. If it's on mobile phone, how does it look like? When it's on desktop screen, how does it look like? They're called breakpoints. All these things are going to be targeting certain components of our page. You just need to understand or know exactly how to target those components within your page, and the rest of the things will be home and dry. Are we together up to that point?
Yes.
Any question? None. So I think what I will do is I will give you a task to do based on all the selectors that we have done. It's going to be an elaborate task, which I just want to test and see exactly how you will be targeting these elements and how this works out for you. So as I've said, moving forward, we are just going to be using the selectors to be able to target some portion of our page or content and then see how we can be able to apply the certain styles that we're going to look at. As I mentioned, things like paddings and margins and background and CSS animations, like how you show things, how you hide things, how you add content before an element and after, and all those kind of effects that we can be able to give to our page to make it look nicer. So that is what we're going to cover next, after which now we're going to move to JavaScript, which now tells us how to actually make this page become alive. So we have a lot of things to achieve. We only have 1 month left. I think that's about just 5 weeks before we do our exam. So I would like us to try as much as possible to attend these classes so that now we're not left out on the things that need to be covered. Is that okay? So if there's no question up to that point, I think I'll take a break. Then we'll meet again. When is the next class? Is it tomorrow?
We don't have a class tomorrow.
Okay, so probably when you have our class next time, I'll start looking at the other components that we can be able to style as far as our document is concerned. So I'll share the video. I'll also share the page with the class rep so that you can now be able to follow up. In the event that you need to follow up on anything, you can look at what I have written and see how that works out. But I believe that if you have the video and have been typing the code in real time, you should be able to just follow very, very smoothly. So since there's no question or comment, I think we'll take a break at that and we meet again next time, okay?
Yes.
Yes.